Hello everyone, I'm Dahl, and today we're continuing a conversation about passing on the faith to the next generation. Far too many young adults who grew up going to church are walking away from the church. They're walking away in droves. And so over this series, the course of this series, I'm giving you what I think and research suggests are 4 solutions to the question, how do I pass on faith to my kids? In session number 2, I shared solution number 1, make it irresistible. The church was never meant to be a have-to experience. It was never meant to be a painful obligation you endured. The first church was irresistible, and if we want to pass on faith to the next generation, the first place to start is by making the church irresistible again. In the last session, I shared solution number 2, which was parents matter most. The old adage is true, monkey see, monkey do. Kids who grow up watching their parents living a vibrant and engaged life of faith, all the research tells us they are exponentially more likely to grow into adulthood with a vibrant and engaged life of faith themselves. Why? Because faith is caught, it's not taught. Well, today, I want to give a third solution, and that third solution is this: talk about it. Kids learn the language of faith by listening to trusted adults talking about faith. Immersed in cultures that speak faith regularly, they learn what I call conversational Christianity. Now, my wife and I, we were privileged to be awarded a scholarship to study the German language in Germany. The graduate school we attended sent us to language school in Germany for a summer to learn that language. Why did they spend all the money sending us all the way over to Germany? Well, because they knew that if we were immersed in the culture, if we lived somewhere where every time we turned around there was German, people speaking German at the cafe, in the grocery store, on television, at the train station, we would be far more successful language students. There would be a much greater chance that the language would stick. Now, similarly, young people learn the language of faith. They learn to speak Christian, if you will, when they're immersed in homes with experienced Christians who regularly speak Christian. Paul wrote in the 10th chapter of Romans, "How are we to believe in one of whom we have never heard? Faith comes from what is heard, and what is heard comes from the word of Christ." Now, young people learn the language of faith when they're surrounded by trusted adults who regularly speak Christian. And surrounded by those experienced with the language of faith, even more transformative is when students are then given a place where they can themselves practice their conversational Christianity, if you will. Like conversational German, it requires immersion in a culture where the language of faith is spoken, as well as they're given firsthand opportunities to practice using that language. Now, unfortunately, talking about Jesus is something Christian teenagers almost never do. And fewer students find themselves growing up in homes where talking about faith in Jesus is commonplace. One of the reasons often is that parents, we feel ill-equipped to articulate faith, which reminds me of the story of when Mary Magdalene, she found herself at the empty tomb face to face with Jesus. What did she do? She ran to the disciples and simply said, "Here's how it went down. Here's what I saw. I've been there and you've got to check it out." She didn't articulate any complex Christian doctrine of resurrection. She simply said, "This is what I experienced." You see, kids today, they don't need adults teaching them what the Bible says or about theology. They don't need information. What they need is adults willing to share. Hey, this is my experience of having Jesus in my life. When students find themselves in a community that talks about Jesus, they become like apprentices, if you will, where people testify to what it is like to live loving Jesus and loving others because of Jesus. And surrounded by people who talk about Jesus, these adults offer laboratories where kids can hone their own language skills in an environment that's safe and encourages them. How do I pass faith on to my kids? Well, you talk about it. Talk with them about Jesus. Surround them with people who talk Jesus. So a couple of questions for you. First, if you are a follower of Jesus, who spoke the language of faith in your life? Who did you, if you will, apprentice under? And secondly, the people who influenced your faith, did they fill you with Christian information, or did they simply share openly their experience of having Jesus in their own life?